Watertime is our time, more than the days we know. Listen to it, watch it, and it becomes a part of you forever. It's an ancient clock that is always right, no matter how fast or slow it must go to be right. There are different times for different days. You can leave it if you want, and you'll find that most clocks are out of tune with the time they seek to serve, but it won't leave you. It's a rhythm in your blood whose patient footsteps haunt your dreaming and slow your days, and you know you're out of step. You can leave it, let the noise of the world drown out its bells, but it won't leave you.
I don't know if I woke. I dreamed I woke, hearing the storm in full voice, the two voices of the northeast wind. I heard the shudder of the seas breaking against the island's rim, the low-tide ledges, and the dawn flowing past quickly. I pulled on my oilskins but left my boots and lit the little fire in the rock under the fresh water and opened the flap of the door. The big rocks looked sturdy and comforting and black with water, the sea ledges down there all gray and roaring. Their job was a little easier for them at low tide, and they were doing it well. There was flung seaweed all over the rocks and the house in the rocks, but the island seemed very big and capable with a storm around it, even with the rain. It felt well anchored to the morning, as though it would never move again. I noticed then that the mast of the house was gone, and all of its rigging too. The rain made me feel more awake, and I thought I'd go down and look for the mast on the northern end of the island. The wind had been southeast when I heard the tugging on the shrouds. So I started to pick my way along the rocks below the tide mark, where the seaweed was all disarranged. And as I came around the west corner of the first sea ledge, I saw the sea people there and their boats. It was a little hard to see them at first. The ones on the rocks were dressed in the colors of the morning, and the ones on the boats in the color of the wind. It was only the contrast with the red rocks and their movement that made them visible in the dim light. They were taller than I remembered. The larger ones were almost as tall as I was. And I'd have thought that vessels who were made to spend their entire lives away from land would be much deeper, but these looked very light and fragile. The larger boat had 2 keels forward and 1 aft. It reminded me of the underbody of a shark. The smaller boat's keel seemed detached from the hull, like an inverted T-beam. It looked very flexible. The masts were down, lying along the rails. At the time, I couldn't guess at the rigging or tell how many masts they had. They had run them well in, quite close together behind the second sea ledge, the half-tide ledge. Even on the island itself, there weren't many places where you could see them. They were singing when I came, working on some gear laid out beside the boats. The song was antiphonal. The ones on the rocks would sing back and forth between them, and then the ones on the boats would join it with a faster melody, a little higher. That song had been my dreaming. It sounded like the wind because it was in the double pitch of the easterly wind, and the parts were connected more like the wind than our songs are. I stood by the first low tide ledge, waiting for the song to make sense to me, at least in its pattern. I thought they hadn't seen me, and they didn't know that either the house or I was there at all. But then I noticed what the ones in the rocks were working on. It was the mast of the house. They had removed the cross tree and split the spar down the middle, and they had one end wedged in the rocks with a sort of Spanish windlass on the other, and they were bending it into a long, easy curve. So they certainly knew the house was there, and I could see how the whole mast could carry away without waking me.